We can start and we can talk about chemistry as a science to solve global level problems. This is what I prepared, and I prepared a kind of a talk for the general audience in the first part, and then we go deeper into chemistry topics. So I wanted to say that it's not really news for anyone here. Our world depends really on a number of very traditional industries, right? Our lifestyle is critically dependent on a lot of things which we take for granted and which are not always the prettiest, right? You have all seen these types of pictures on your way from the airport, on your way to somewhere outside of Lisbon. We typically go through these types of landscapes. And these landscapes are part of what we need as a society, but I don't think they are completely compatible with the time we live in. We live in a year which is a beginning of an era of new challenges. And many of these challenges are reflected in the fact that we really cannot continue to do business as usual as we have been doing it in the last 20 to 30 years, right? Our environment has a number of challenges and poses a number of problems to us. And I think what's very important is that the civil society has already started to complain, and rightfully so, and to demand change. You see here people protesting because there are problems related to water, there are problems related to our environment, there are problems related to the ecosystem. And when I gave this type of talk, and people introduce me in the beginning of the talk as a professor for chemistry, they say, okay, but your discipline is for sure the one thing we actually want to avoid going forward, right? We want a world with less chemicals, we want clothes with no chemicals, we want water without chemicals. And I try to explain to them, actually, chemistry is much more a part of solutions than it is a part of problems. I'm showing you pictures that suggest things that I will talk about more in detail a couple of slides later. But in questions related to energy, in questions related to healthcare, and even in hidden questions related to our planet's climate and situation, chemistry is actually much more the solution than the problem. I don't know if anybody knows what is depicted, I mean, people in the front rows know. Everybody knows what is depicted on these two beautiful spherical images. These are pictures of the ozone layer as it was over the Antarctica in 1990 and in 2010. And what you can see is that there is a hole, the blue part, and the hole has actually gotten smaller. And I think we as chemists should every night whip ourselves in the back for not having been able to communicate, first, that this has happened, and second, that this happened exclusively because of chemistry. Right? In the generation which I belong to, we grew up in the 1980s listening to the fact that we would all be burned. When we got to the 2000 and somethings, we would all burn under the bad UV rays that would pass through the ozone layer, which was getting bigger and bigger, the hole was getting bigger and bigger, and they would burn us. It was only a question of whether we would be like a picanha fried on both sides, or whether we would just stretch an arm and get a little bit of a bronze there. And that was all because of chemistry, right? I'm talking to the people in the back. It was because of certain compounds called CFCs, which were used in everything. As far as I remember, any time you pressed a spray, be it a deodorant, be it insecticide, anytime you did psh, psh, you were destroying the ozone layer. That's the message we received. And that's because the CFCs were present in our fridges, in those sprays, in aerosols, and in every sort of product. And what happened was that people got together, realized these chemicals are bad, we should not continue to use them. And the industry said, okay, these chemicals are only used for a function. But for sure, there would be other compounds that could be used for the same function and which would not have the same bad effects. And then they signed the protocol in Montreal, and through that protocol, it was clear we will ban the use of these compounds from now on. And our planet responded as it always does, by adjusting back, by backtracking, and it's predicted now that by 2050, this hole will be completely covered. Right? This is a victory of chemistry, because molecules serve functions. If a molecule has an undesired effect, we just change that molecule and find another one that has the same function. Go home today and tell your people that chemistry saved the ozone layer. Is chemistry saving us one more time? Funnily enough, this has an undesired consequence, which is because of the gap of the hole in the ozone layer, we're going to have, when this is completely covered, we're going to have a much faster increase in temperature around the Antarctica, which will lead to the melting of this and. So there will be other unintended consequences whenever we do something good, but at least we did something. And that's why I want to present chemistry as a source of solutions for our planet. So what I'm going to show is a couple of examples and case studies that I find very fascinating from different industries to which I am not affiliated, but which I think are interesting. So I see a lot of people in the audience that are probably wearing these. This is the younger generation. I hope you still have a pair of those at home. We, the older people, start to not wear these things so often, but still, you all know that these are blue jeans. You all know that blue jeans are dyed with a pigment originally extracted from a certain plant called indigo, and which looks like this. And this is something very nice, except for the fact that, of course, we no longer dye all the blue jeans in the world by extracting the pigment from that plant. There is by far not enough plant for all the genes in the world. And so what we do is we produce indigo through chemical reactions. And those chemical reactions, unfortunately, rely on a compound called aniline. Aniline is a starting material to make indigo. You could ask Professor Mathilde Marques for an organic chemistry explanation of how aniline becomes indigo. It's actually a very beautiful transformation. But the problem is that if you start from aniline, then there will be some contamination of aniline in the final product. And aniline is one of those chemicals that Donald Trump would call a bad hombre. It has pretty much everything you can imagine as the bad labels associated to it. And so there are some issues related to the presence of traces of aniline in indigo, which then goes all the way to genes and to the final consumer. And there is a company, again, I'm not associated with this company, which is called Archroma, which has invented aniline-free indigo, aniline-free denim. And more than make propaganda in favor of this company, I have to say, as an organic chemist, I'm fascinated to see that now genes are produced which teach people about the structure of aniline. So there is an organic chemistry structure in genes produced all over the world, and I can only hope that this company is very successful so that they can really educate people. There is even a hashtag aniline-free denim, which they have been promoting. Again, that people talk about chemicals, that people look at chemicals, as long as they don't forget that there are still chemicals in that genes, it's just produced by a different method. I also believe chemistry is really a very big innovation driver for our world. And again, I have a nice example to give related to something that you already saw a couple of slides ago, namely solar panels. So it's no surprise that especially countries like Portugal are very much in a, I think, perfect position to lead in terms of renewable energies because we have a lot of sunshine. You probably are aware that these things are now very easy to get. I actually would like to ask, how many people here in the audience have solar panels at home? Still not so many.
But we have them.
We have them here. IST has them. This is very good. And it's very interesting to see that most of these, the ones that you buy, the ones that you can have at your home, are actually still based on silicon. And silicon has its issues, right? There is a limit which you cannot go above in terms of efficiency based on silicon. And there are companies investigating new materials. So these things, which are beautiful, I leave to my colleagues who certainly are much more expert in solid state structures. But these, as far as I understood, are perovskites. And there is a company in Oxford called Oxford PV, which again I think is beautiful because it brings these names to the main screen, right? People talk about perovskites because this is the perovskite company. And they are trying very hard to be the first ones to produce perovskite-based solar cells. There's a lot of advantages associated with the change from silicon to a different material. And again, this is chemistry enabling innovation and ultimately contributing to saving our planet. But of course, I am from academia. As far as I understood, this is here a little bit of a duel with Lino. And so I should kind of present what academia has, in my opinion, which is unique, which is our ability to ask endless questions and to ask questions which are completely open-ended. Okay? Lino cannot go to his company and decide to investigate why the sky is blue, unless there is an integration of that question in the business plan or the ideas of the company. I can wake up tomorrow and decide to research on why is this wood of this color. Okay? And that is, I think, one of the strengths of academia, and especially when it comes to chemical synthesis. So I'd like to ask you all a question. There's a lot of chemists in this audience. I'd like to ask you, how many pharmacologically active molecules could theoretically exist, could theoretically be made? Let me qualify my question, because first of all, which constraints would I include when I'm thinking of the properties that pharmacologically active molecules typically have? Which elements would you consider including in that consideration? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, fluorine, sulfur, chlorine, boron. So 3, 6, 9 elements, right? Not that much. Periodic table has 128. So we're not putting any metals right now, because otherwise the number explodes, right? We are staying very, very constrained. I'm also going to make it very small. I'm talking molecules no more than 500 in molecular weight, 30 atoms at most. So I'm talking really small molecules. Anybody has an idea of the number? I mean, I guess the people in the front probably do. Anybody in the back has an idea of a number? Million, 10 millions, 100 millions, 1,000 millions, billions? No? More than a billion? Thousands of billions? Millions of billions? 10 to the power 60 is the number which is estimated. I wrote it down here so that you can understand how big that number really is. Just for a little bit of context, if you go into chemical abstracts or SciFinder, the total number of molecules which have been made until now is around a couple hundred millions maximum. Okay? So we're talking 10 to the power 6. We've made this much molecules. There is a little bit more to go. Okay? And so it's not surprising that academia still works very hard and needs a lot of people. I just want to briefly introduce my research team. There is a reason why organic chemistry groups are very big, because there's a lot of molecules here. We are still very far from reaching the number that I showed you in the back slide. We have lots and lots of people, and our research goals, if I had to categorize them, include things as vague as inventing new reactions, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Things like total synthesis of natural products, and interrogating biology with chemistry. And I want to show you examples of the two ones that I've highlighted, and we don't have a lot of time, but to kind of give you an idea about what we do when we invent new reactions. And to talk about that, I'd like to refer to a project of ours which deals with the element fluorine. Right? We just spoke about fluorine as one of the 9 elements that we would choose for biological or pharmacologically active molecules, and fluorine is really a very valuable element in medicinal chemistry. There's a very common strategy that people do in medchem, which is to replace carbon-hydrogen bonds with carbon-fluorine bonds, for a lot of reasons, right? You put the fluorine, you don't change size, but you change electronics, since fluorine is very electronegative. At the same time, you generate a bond, carbon-fluorine, which, from a metabolic point of view, is essentially untouchable, right? Cytochromes destroy pretty much every CH bond, but they cannot destroy CF bonds. That's why more than 20%, I think the number is even higher nowadays, of all new approved drugs, you just have to go to the FDA records, always contain at least one fluorine atom. And what we have discovered is a transformation in which you can look at molecules as diverse as the ones I've shown you here, and you see here compounds of all types of functions. Again, structure and function are the things that I find most fascinating in chemistry. Right, you see compounds that are blockbusters in the agrochemicals industry, literally. You see compounds typically found in Sessão late at night. You found molecules that we typically give our PhD students in the last year. I recommend heavily. It helps them, especially towards the end of the PhD thesis. And then this is actually a molecule with a promising profile against cancer. You see the structure is very different. The functions are also very different. And yet, the transformation that we have discovered in our group allows you to replace one and only one carbon-hydrogen bond by a carbon-fluorine bond. Looks like science fiction, right? especially because we organic chemists don't really draw carbon-hydrogen bonds. In none of these molecules you see hydrogen, because we usually omit them. Professor Mathilde taught me that structures look prettier and more easy to grasp if you don't necessarily draw all carbon-hydrogen bonds. If I do that for piperazine, the structure will look pretty ugly. But it will also show you, first of all, there are a lot of carbon-hydrogen bonds, and they are very different from one another. Right? Some of them are attached to an aromatic ring, others are attached to aliphatic positions, others are next to a heteroatom, others are in a ring, others are in an acyclic situation. So the idea that Nuno can come here and tell you we can replace one and only one of those carbon-hydrogen bonds with a carbon-fluorine bond really sounds like science fiction. And yet, that's what we have accomplished. We can replace only one of those bonds by fluorine, and not just in piperazine, but in all four of these compounds. And we can put fluorine in a specific position by design. We can discuss later while this reaction proceeds and what the mechanism is. I don't want to go too much into detail at this stage. What I want to tell you is, this is a question that comes from fundamental investigation, fundamental research, right? I don't have to pay the bills, I don't have to justify why I want to do this, I just wanted to do it. But by doing it, I've generated compounds which probably have never been made before. For example, this compound here, citalopram, is a blockbuster antidepressant, it really works. And I can tell you the company that patented it, Eli Lilly, published I think more than 12 patents to cover all possible aspects of structure. And in all those patents, this specific structure is not contemplated. Of course, you cannot patent something that you cannot make. Right? You can patent some prophetic compounds that you might be able to prepare, but certainly not that you could only dream of. And so we now have a compound that nobody had ever made before in this planet, which is directly related to a molecule which has documented efficacy as a medicine. So we could actually go across the street to our colleagues of the medical university, tell them this, they will be shocked. That's what medical doctors always do, and biologists. Whenever you tell them you have something that nobody else can get and which was never prepared before, they are shocked because they cannot understand that that is the bread and butter of organic chemistry. And actually, we asked them, can you compare this compound to the parent compound? Do some kind of assay. They did an assay. This is a functional assay about the uptake of this molecule in the serotonin transporter. That's what citalopram does. That's how you actually modulate depression, right? You block the serotonin transporter so that the organism believes it has a lot of serotonin and therefore that you are feeling very happy. And you see here that there is a loss of potency of roughly 5-fold, right? 80 to 400, which is actually much less than we would have expected, because when you put the fluorine, you would expect that all the atoms, all the heteroatoms close to it will become much less efficient in binding. And the fact that this citalopram is still very potent has to do with something that we could not have predicted, namely that when this molecule goes into the serotonin transporter, these interactions all become weaker, but a new interaction is gained precisely to the fluorine atom that we have introduced, which is not present when the native molecule is binding to the binding point. And so we reported this in Science 2018 and Nature Chemistry 2019. And this, I think, is a very nice example of how what you do with no real objective of application might actually allow you a window to ask biological questions. When you started the fluorination project, we certainly did not expect to do this type of work. And now we go for a little bit of a hardcore organic chemistry lecture. Now I got you alert. I can tell you something a little bit more exotic. And this is actually a picture of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, which in the right time of the year, as you can see, changes the colors of the leaves in a way that I find very, very inspiring. And it allows me to dream a little bit. Whenever I sit, there's a bench here, whenever I sit in this bench in the summer, late summer afternoon, I always start to fantasize. And you see what I fantasize about: ideal reactions. And I especially dream about an ideal synthesis. Let me tell you what I mean. Here is a compound, a natural product, it's an alkaloid extracted from the skin of some frogs in South America, indolizidine 207A. Doesn't matter. It's a molecule that doesn't look even very complicated, right? A couple of rings, a couple of stereocenters. It has been prepared many times in the literature. The best total synthesis, the best synthesis of this compound is reported here in JACS 2012 by the group of Ryan Shenvi. Beautiful paper. Those of you who like organic chemistry are more than invited to read it. And Ryan Shandy's group makes it in 6 steps, which I think is very decent, from geranyl acetonitrile. So it's really a lovely synthesis. The starting material is already kind of a complicated molecule, and then in 6 steps, he gets to the final product. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, if I asked you how many steps should the ideal synthesis of this compound have, what would you say?
1.
1. If it's ideal, it has to be 1. That's dream. And of course you realize, whew, this is a tricky proposal, right? How are you going to make this molecule in a single step? And when you think about this, you start to wonder, let's really try to figure out how this would be possible. I see 2 ways. The first way is that the starting material is probably already so complicated that then you do 1 step and you kind of end up with the final product. The second alternative, which I find very exciting, is that instead of having 1 starting material, you have starting materials. And that they somehow, in a single step, combine to give you the desired product. But then, they don't have to be so complicated themselves, right? They can be a little bit simpler. It's the reaction that combines them that has to somehow orchestrate everything. So I'm talking about what people like me and Vasco would refer to as a multi-component reaction. Right? Lots of different reactants, bam, they get together, and you get an actual product at the end. I'm talking multi-component reactions. I can schematize them showing 3 reactants, for example. That's the smallest you have for a multi-component. And when you hear about multi-component reactions, at least among us organic chemists, there's a lot of name reactions that come to mind. I don't know if people teach these in basic organic chemistry. There is the Ughi reaction, the Passerini reaction, the Biginelli reaction, the Piancatelli. Somehow they're all Italian. So Italy must have something, probably because of the cooking, right? Italians are very good or were very good at inventing multi-component reactions. And those people who know those reactions, those of you who know about the Ughi, the Piancatelli, the Biginelli, those reactions don't make these natural products, right? And they make nice things like amino acids or small linear molecules with a couple of functional groups. They don't make polycyclic alkaloids with a nitrogen in the middle and serosynthetase. And that's because it's very difficult to design multi-component reactions, and particularly difficult to design multi-component reactions that would give you a complicated product. What is a multi-component reaction in a nutshell? You have to somehow have your starting materials pre-programmed, almost as if they have their own artificial intelligence, so that each one of them knows with whom it has to react. In this case, the sphere knows it reacts with the tetrahedron, and I'm showing their equilibrium errors because it's very important in multi-component reactions that things are reversible. Otherwise, you go back to dead ends. And at some point, once and only once these 2 have connected, the cube comes in and you form this. And this is some sort of a pre-organization in a ternary complex. And this is very difficult to design, actually. It's not easy to design a priori and de novo a multi-component reaction. And sitting in the Schönbrunn Palace, I realized, and I will try to convince you, that actually the idea that it's very difficult to design multi-component reactions is wrong. We, organic chemists, have already spent the last 2 decades working very heavily in a discipline of organic chemistry, which has done nothing else but organize multi-component reactions. And that is the discipline of organocatalysis. I don't know how many of you are aware. There is a class of reactions which are, I think, epitomized by the transformation shown here, where acetone combines with an aldehyde. This is the one that people always use, in the presence of a catalytic amount of an organic molecule, conventionally and classically L-proline, the beautiful amino acid, and then you obtain a product which looks like an aldol reaction. This is an organocatalytic reaction, right? The catalyst is an organic molecule. And to be entirely honest, it is a Nobel Prize winning reaction, right? Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2021 was given to Ben List and David Macmillan, and this is the reaction that Ben List published in the very first paper in 1999. This reaction, ladies and gentlemen, is a multi-component reaction. It's just disguised. Because we know mechanistically that what happens is that acetone combines with proline to form an enamine. And the enamine is a species that attacks the aldehyde reversibly to form this intermediate. This intermediate then is hydrolyzed to give you the product and regenerate the catalyst. But if you look at this reaction under the paradigm of the sphere, the tetrahedron, and the square, or the cube, then the enamine is nothing else than this reversibly assembled binary complex, which then combines with the cube, namely the aldehyde, to give you, at one point, the ternary complex assembled under equilibrium conditions. It's just that we never see this, since the final product disassembles one of the components, which is a catalyst to turn over. But this reaction is a multi-component reaction, and to be honest, all organocatalytic reactions, the last 20 years of research in this field, which is a Nobel Prize-winning field, all organocatalytic reactions are multi-component reactions. It's just that because one of the components is a catalyst, we never noticed that. And so, if there was a way to take that reversibly assembled ternary complex, which is present in every organocatalytic reaction, and find a way to freeze it so that its components can no longer escape, you would have a beautiful multi-component reaction. And we have done that with a reaction that is well known in the organocatalysis lingo, namely the Michael addition of aldehydes to Michael acceptors. This species here with an EVG electron group is a Michael acceptor. The aldehyde requires a catalyst, which is the amine, and we're now going to use that catalyst in a stoichiometric amount. Secondary amine combines with aldehyde, forms an enamine. Enamine adds to the Michael acceptor, and you start by forming this species, which is charged. And this species, it is well known, Zebach published it years ago, that this species collects reversibly into a cyclobutane. And so this compound here, actually both compounds, are the reversibly assembled ternary intermediate. And now we come and propose a new step called an inverse hydride shuttle, which does nothing else than isomerize this compound into this compound. And if you look at the structure, what all you've done is remove a carbon-hydrogen bond, break a carbon-carbon bond, and reform it on the other side. These two compounds have exactly the same composition, the same atoms, just the bonds are different. But then look how the final product now looks a lot like the natural products I showed in the previous slide. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a multi-component reaction that allows you to make molecules that matter. And without going too much into details, because again, it's not the purpose of this today, we now have a process where we mix three ubiquitous starting materials. You can imagine how many hundreds of amines, how many thousands of aldehydes, and how many dozens of Michael acceptors you have in the Aldrich catalog. You could mix them all together, they all go to this, and then you apply this catalytic event, it's actually a catalytic step, that locks those components into place. We could even do this in a 96 well plate and generate immediately a library of such compounds in a single step. So now we are making things that matter from simple feedstock precursors. We just published this last year in Nature Chemistry. The reaction is really a dream because you form a lot of stereocenters and they are all formed with perfect stereoselectivity. It's very, very fortunate. It's one of those cases where everything works. Now let's go a little bit to tease Nino, because of course we in academia sometimes also have a little bit of an eye for business. I regret that there is no colleague here from Faculdade de Farmácia, as far as I can see, because the story I will tell relates a little bit to them and relates to something that all of you see every time you sit in a cafe or a tasca and you ask for a mini. And what comes with that mini? It always does. And it comes for free, you don't have to pay. And probably you don't know, termossos actually come from a plant, species of plants called lupin, and these lupins, they generate a lot more seeds than it took to plant them, right? There is an increase of 15 or 20-fold. And what you typically do in these tascas, that's why they make their own termossos, they don't buy them from Fairbar or something like that, they make their own termossos. They buy the seeds, you buy kilos of seeds for less than €1. You boil those seeds, and as you boil them, they start to swell, and get this beautiful look that termossos have. And anybody ever done this at home? It's very easy, right? Just put them in a pot, boil them, and eventually they will swell and get this beautiful look. If you try to eat them right away, they will be very, very unpleasant because they are extremely bitter. So what do these tascas do? They have 1, 2, maybe 3 buckets with clean water. You take all the boiled termossos, you put them on the first water, shake them a little bit, take them, you put them on the second water, you shake them a little bit, you take them, you put them on the third water, you shake them a little bit, You add some salt, you take them out, they are no longer bitter, they are salty, they are ready to eat. So what happened in each one of these buckets? You remove the bitter taste of the moss. And what that bitter taste was, ladies and gentlemen, is an alkaloid, which, once extracted, can be converted into spartane. And once we realized that, it might make sense to create a company which we call Spartax Chemicals, to take the wastewater, because otherwise this bucket water, you know what happened at the end of the day, right? Goes on the sink, and hasta la vista. So to reutilize this, which is actually just going to waste, extract an alkaloid, transform it into spartane, and if you think about the price of spartane, if you go to a catalog, it oscillates between 60 and 120 euros per gram. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, not even gold is that expensive. I checked the Portugal gold rate in May, and 1 gram of gold, 24 carats, was 55 euros. So we're actually extracting from a wastewater something that generates a product which is more expensive than gold. Not bad. And all because we know some chemistry. And so this idea that chemistry can be an opportunity, a business opportunity generator, I find super fascinating, especially because if you think about it, Tremoço even has a lot more to offer than just being associated to beer, right? You can grind Tremoço and make flour, and actually Tremoço has a lot of protein. Tremoço has a lot of omega-3 and omega-6 essential oils. It turns out that the Tremoço oil is an ideal component for dermocosmetic. I don't know if someone is here that is working on that area, but dermocosmetic and Tremoço is really a combination for the future. And one last thing, when you eat your Tremoço, you typically bite on it, squeeze out the nice fruit, and throw away the peel, the cover, right? The shell. That shell actually probably could easily be converted into a very good source of bioplastics. So the next time you throw away the shells of Tremoço, think twice whether you don't want to keep them. If you keep them, send them to Vienna. We will convert them into nice plastic objects for you. So I always have to thank the entities that support our work, because to be entirely honest, we would not be able to do what we do without very generous support of all these entities. I always like to thank the European Union. I was here recently in another university, and I gave a workshop about how to write an ERC proposal. I'm happy to also discuss something like that with technical colleagues. And I'd like to say that chemistry really, in my opinion, has a very bright future ahead. And that has to do with the fact that we need to engage the society at large. We need to talk to the man and the woman on the street and tell them that there is no reason to be afraid of chemistry. Because actually chemistry is the solution and not the problem. And I have done a lot of effort in that field. I have written a book in German called Die Chemie stimmt, which has, in my opinion, a very unfortunate cover. And probably that's the reason why it didn't become such a success. This book was translated in 2 languages, Korean and Portuguese. Its translation was launched in this house 2 years ago and became a bestseller, right? It already goes in the 7th edition, and you can tell why. They chose a proper cover with bread, which Portuguese doesn't love bread, with a nice color. They did put some chemical structure, so I'm surprised that it still became a success, but I think the bread overshadows everything, and so it kind of compensates. And then there was a second book, which was also introduced in this home. Professor Mathilde Mark was present in both of them and was one of the leading persons in the introduction of the book, Como Desvendar o Quebra-Cabeças da Origem da Vida. I'm also present on Instagram, and so I'm always advised at every talk I give where there are young people to say, please go on Instagram and follow me. There's a lot of interesting things here. We post nice stuff about all sorts of aspects of chemistry. Sometimes also some pictures and selfies with colleagues. And so please go on Instagram. We always have like 50 new followers after I give a talk, and I say this. So please go on Instagram and follow us. We need more followers. And the last thing I want to say about chemistry and its future is the notion that there is a very interesting video game, which if you have a smartphone, you can all play right now. You just have to go on your browser and type this blaster.dichemie.at. Right? This URL. You will go on the landing page of Virus Blaster, which was again made during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, by the Association of Chemical Industries in Austria. and it's a platform game which you can play with one of 3 avatars. Actually, the first one, this guy here, is Thomas Morgenstern. Thomas Morgenstern is a Cristiano Ronaldo of Austrian sport, a very, very famous ski jumper, was gold medalist and Olympic champion multiple times. The one in the middle is Marie Curie, but the one I would recommend you playing with is the last one, because it's me. So you can actually play this video game with me as an avatar, and you see me trying to kill the bad guys. Please avoid falling in these things, right? You have to jump over the bad guys to kill them, otherwise they will kill you. I would only ask, please don't kill me too many times. I do know that this avatar was the most selected one when the game came out, and I'm sure it was because of all my undergraduate students who finally had a chance to kill me, even if not in person. And so, to conclude, and probably to open the discussion, I see chemistry as really the innovative discipline, because it's the intersection between the smallest of worlds in physics, the larger world of biology. It stands at the border, and it's really a source of innovative solutions, of business opportunities. Whenever I talk to schools, I have lots of meetings with schools here in Portugal. Once per week, we are online, just like now, online with the school somewhere in the country. And what I always find most attracts the students, I tell them about chemistry, and they're like a little bit falling asleep. And then I say, you can make a lot of money with chemistry, right? I tell stories like the one I said. Go to the wastewaters, which anyway they are throwing away, and take gold out of them. And then I see the eyes. So maybe this is really the thing that will draw the future generations to chemistry. I then, after any one of those sessions, I always get emails from the students saying, actually, there is a pond of water around with some plants, and I was wondering if you could extract something from those plants to make some money. So once they get out of that session, they start to look at the world around them with the glasses of a chemist. And if you look at the world around you with the glasses of a chemist, boy, oh boy, you're going to be very busy dealing with all possible business opportunities that are going to pop up. And the one in red, I put in red because I still think it is the main driver for us in academia, since it's an academia industry session, the ability to really invent things just because you dream, without necessarily looking for an application. And so with that being said, I thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion we'll have.
Vamos para a segunda parte do programa, então. Vai ser difícil, porque eu concordo com o que tu disseste. Acho que, começando pela história de investigar o céu azul, so, second part of the class. It's going to be difficult because I fully agree with everything you said. I have the same passion that you have for chemistry, probably not as deeper. But then coming back to what you said at the beginning, coming to my board of management and tell them I work now to investigate the blue sky would be difficult. But I would need to have a business case, and I would try to find one. And to them telling also 2 stories where also the starting point was an idea, and we kind of had to convince people to do things. And in the first case, was not even the board, we just did it. How will that be? So I will start, and this is something also a topic I typically use also in the seminars. I think we are technical. I use a little bit of my example in my career to illustrate what kind of activities students can have when they go to industry. And this is me in 2001 when I started in R&D. And research and development was very easy to start with because I was basically just doing same kind of techniques and chemistry I was using in my PhD. But the company, like Bayer, has different areas and functions. And if you see this diagram, just gives you an idea. If you think of the blue arrows as the material flow from research and development to production and distribution and sales, it's what you could imagine with all the support functions. And basically, throughout my career, I did a little bit of everything in those boxes. So after R&D, I was in supply chain, and I just put you the pictures here that you see. It's not in the lab. It's not necessarily about the computer. It's also a lot to do with exchanging interaction, bringing processes. Then I went to IT, and then I went to marketing, and this we are celebrating the overcapacity of the plant of the product. So this is actually a spoiler alert. That's one of the stories I'm going to tell you. And on the next function, I was more linked to strategies, a lot of group activities on innovation, and my previous function. Before this one, I was management support, so I was assistant to the CEO. And here was a visit to China, and I don't know who the photographer was, but certainly he or she wanted to call me some bad name with those two things on. You have an idea. So, and typically companies, they do not have the organigram as I showed before. They are actually having the product at the center. It's everything about the product. The product is the key. The product needs to be perfect. The product needs to be produced at lower cost, by the way, with a higher margin. That's the product instead. And so this means that typically companies, they see so much their product that they are completely convinced that what they produce is what customers need. Reality, however, looks a bit different. Luckily, it is, but normally it doesn't. So I'll come to that later, but let's start with some basics of economics on a product life cycle. This is a typical sales curve. When you put the product in the market, sales, everything is right, will go up, and somewhere when the product gets obsolete, they will eventually come down. The cost is at the beginning higher because you need to promote the product. You need to advertise, you need to bring it, distribute it, to bring it. So if you kind of put one minus the other, just very simple mathematics, you'll find the area where you are not making any money, but time goes by, and you are not making money, until the point where eventually you make money, and the point where it becomes so margin that it's really, plus the cost, it's really attractive. Now, for companies like the company I work for, there is a lot of work done before that starting point of getting to the market. We're talking about up to 14 years of work with R&D in biology testing, in environmental impact toxicology, etc. Not even talking about all the advertising work we've done with the customer, sometimes with the medical doctors if it's about the pharmacy. So all this is out of course. I'm not going into detail, so the point of bringing this chart here is to bring you to the awareness of this complexity. And if you remember the numbers from Nuno, all these zeros, so Bayer also has a huge database of chemical substances, around 6 million chemicals in a warehouse, which are, by the way, I invite you to visit. It's a beautiful place. We have a robot taking all the samples, bring them according to what the colleagues from R&D want to test in biology. And the robot will get all molecules with this group, and the other group with the Fs also there, I'm pretty sure about it. I think my molecule is a second F. And then this tray of new substances will be tested in biology, and that's it. So for each substance that makes its way to the market, we're talking about 100,000 them that have been through that process I've shown in the previous slide, which brings the costs a little bit higher. This is no longer like this, they are around 300 million euro for each molecule that makes it to the market. So next time you want to be hard with the industry, just think about the effort the industry makes to bring solutions to the market. So this is the chart I just showed you a couple of minutes before, and this is the chart if you think about the time to market. So how many years you are investing, putting money in R&D until the final date comes that you hope it will sell. You hope it's going to be a success. Now, when I enter in marketing with product management, coming from supply chain, nobody would give you your product. Of course, no experience in marketing, I just got a new one. But for any project and any product, the curve of sales look like this. And the new blockbusters, when they come here, a lot of money to promote them because you know that peak sales is going to the hundreds of millions of euros, billions of euros. That's what it takes to get a successful product. And when they start to decline, you have many options. One of them is you just digest it, sell it to somebody else. Other, you just stop it, or you try to build the life cycle of the product. You try to bring elements in the product that will make the consumers or your customers to regain confidence or to believe in the product, to rebrand it, to do whatever to make it work. And if you are really successful, you get even increase sales of a low product, which is like about to go down. So you want to increase the sales of your product, you want to reinvent your product, you can only do it really by focusing on the customer. So the customer will need to be the center of your attention. If you are looking out at the market, it's not about the properties of the product if they are not really able to serve the purpose and the needs of the customer. And to do that, in the case of agriculture, it means to be with the farmers. And it's so important that you spend time with your customers. If they are farmers, you need to go to the farmers' house. So I spend a lot of time traveling, and I still do this today. A lot of traveling is needed. And the story I'm going about to tell is about the product, which is still in the market. It's more than 50 years old. And when I got it, it's still successful. When I got it, it's a fungicide, by the way, so it's a I don't know what would be the effect. It's a polymer structure with zinc in it. And what the fungicide does, so it prevents that spores from a fungus, which typically will be like flying around in the field and deposit themselves on leaves, and then will feed themselves from the cells from the leaf, and they will die. The cells, so what you see from outside are black spots. Not all the black spots, not all black spots are caused by fungus. It could be by nutrient deficiency, whatever. But typically, if they are like ones like that, typically it will be a fungus. So what contact fungicides do? They are applied on the surface of the leaves, and by contact, they will kill the fungus. They will prevent this effect, which is quite important because fungus will. So this is how the sales of the product looked like when I got the product. So this is typically, if you look at these 30 years of solar, so what will, and actually the discussions were there, I can hear, so if you remember the chart, we're talking about that part of the curve. So no evolution, product is there. Next step is you stop, you sell it. But there were not many alternatives in the market that somehow competitors were doing better. That's basically what was the case. So listening to the customer, everybody knew that this product was an instant greening effect. People knew that in the market. It's a low product greening effect. It's difficult to see, but you can see some difference from left to right. There is a little greener. I know it's always greener on the other side. And if you also look at the roots, they were healthier when you applied them. Underbody is a commercial brand for cocaine. That's the molecule I just showed you. And then I started to ask the countries, please send me, do you have information, do you have material from this product, from what do the farmers say when you use this product? And then a trend was there, so you could see that if in disease-free environment, because you cannot compare a field with disease, with a field without disease and a product, it's not a fair comparison, but typically disease-free scenarios are both controlled, but one with a competitor product, one without product, and they would have similar efficacy, so it's not what we get just by itself. In different crops, kale, tomato, corn, you would see this difference. That there would be healthier plants if the treatment would be without product, and also the yield would be high. Right? Then the point was, we cannot just go marketing, do branding, say, well, people say, right? So we had to do that, some trials, and we did. And I tell you, the budget we have to do this kind of projects for new products is almost zero. Last after manual budget is not much higher. So what we did, I basically convinced my audience, brought some passion to the discussions, and they kind of did experiments on the side. We even had, by the way, a Portuguese guy was working with Bayer, from New York, and he was so passionate about this idea that himself used to work in a wine producing company before Bayer, and himself after the day work, he would go to school and talk to the guy from the company, and he was spraying himself and doing himself for free, just because he was so passionate about the topic. So what we did was, this is a banana plant, same age, 3 banana plants, same age, grown in the lab, completely equal conditions. And on the left side, completely having zinc as it needs for development to grow healthy. Healthier here, zero zinc, we should just hear the effect of zinc in the growth of the plant, in this case banana. And here, the same situation as here, but just sprayed with a normal program of so with this we could see amazing results of fungicide sprayed to treat fungus is actually feeding the plant with zinc. So I contacted the professor, Professor Chakmak, he's like the guru of zinc in the industry, is from the University of Chavanchi in Turkey. And he was like, not really brilliant, fungicide, no? But actually he did experiments and he came to the same conclusions, that this was actually working. And he also told me actually zinc is a micronutrient which is in deficit in most of the fields of the world. So agriculture is done in fields without zinc and needs to be compensated with special fertilizer, which is not what you have when you buy so-called NPK fertilizer, which is like the ammonia and some phosphorus and potassium that you put soil
Sodium hydroxide.
So you need to compensate, but for zinc, typically you don't compensate. And so we started to realize, well, we can have this argument to tell our colleagues in the campus, to tell the farmers, if you actually treat with the product, you will compensate for the deficit zinc. And then also, Professor Chakmak also called me to the attention that actually this is a big issue, and UNICEF is one of the major sponsors of zinc supplements for children, because zinc is linked to basically all diseases and risks that can be prevented by the fact that having zinc and can be killing by the fact that not having zinc. So also by having this effect of treating plants with fungicides, you would then have richer crops of zinc, which would then prevent diseases. But just imagine that now bio would come to the public and say, well, use ultracol because you can eat healthier crops. Fungicide, we think, no go. So we could never use this argument. We just know it's the case. We just know that, and we proved it. We did two kinds of tests. One was just by getting the leaves, little drops of fungicide, ultracol, and then a couple of hours and days later, we just cut the leaves in different areas and then measure the zinc. And clearly, the zinc is bioavailable. It enters the plant and goes then also to the fruits and to the eatable parts. We would never promote this, so we did not promote this, but the zinc effect we did. So we had a campaign called Zinking Ahead. And Zinking Ahead, people got motivated. We were present in several scientific symposia, and also our colleagues got a new brand and were happy because commercial guys, they like brands. We need to give them brands with names, something that they can sell, they need material to sell. So to enter home with zinc, wow, brand new product, no. Old, like no other product in the market, more than 50. But look what happened. Enter home with zinc, we actually doubled sales. And today, even, this was 10 years ago, sales are there. So just imagine the value that this was created with these little ideas of the experiment just by following up, that's one part of the work story I want to tell, with the farmer and understanding needs and understanding what they really want. They don't want the fungicide, they want healthier plants, they want harvest, they want money. The other story I want to tell you is a much broader one. It has to do with a problem we have as humanity, as humans. The fact that we have a growing world population that needs to be fed. And according to some estimation, we need to increase productivity by 50% in order to be able to kill 2.2 billion people that are going to be on this earth by 2050. Right? Big challenge, but the resources are limited. We have available like 1/3 of land for agriculture, using 75% of water, drinkable water, which is a lot. And also agriculture, by the way, if you count the production on the field, but also transport and everything around the food systems, account for about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. So, like Nuno was saying, chemistry is the problem. Typically, agriculture is the problem, and it's not, right? And you can actually, it's not what we're talking today can actually, by the so-called regenerative agriculture, you can use, you can capture carbon in the soil. Right? And with agriculture, you can really have solutions for this. I will not focus about this today, maybe another time. I just wanted to also to call the attention for the pressure that we have in climate change and the fact that today's agricultural practices, they actually are reducing the fertility of soils. So we do have a lot of pressure to make this work. And technology has been working hard, and if you look how technology, in this case producing corn for 250 kilograms corn, you see visually represented the area you needed by mid of the 20th century and today, which is quite impressive. So this is a combination of seed technology, crop protection at the same time, and you see that the reduction was there. But today, you see that the potential reduction will not really make the huge difference, right? And that's where the problem we have today. So we need what? We do deforestation. We just cut trees, right? Not good idea, because deforestation already today accounts for up to 15% of forest gas emissions. So not good idea. I think everybody in the room would agree that we not do that. So what we need to do now, focus on sustainability and the customer. So it's no longer the product, no longer just the customer. The entire environment needs to be taken into account in this way of thinking to find solutions. And we are not alone. Fortunately, governments, at least on the paper, are all supporting the UN development goals and are all having very detailed plans of action how to get there for each and every of these areas, be it on the poverty, be it on responsible consumption, sanitation. There's a huge action plan to address this, which is actually very well done. Just wanted to show one for the purpose of today's session, which is the 0 100, objective number 2. And on this objective number 2, you will see that to address extreme poverty and hunger, we need to address smallholder farmers. So the small producers, which today occupy something like 30-40% of the area, even though there are 550 million of them, and they fit already more than 50% of the population in their countries. Now, by doing that, the moment you address smallholder farmers, make them produce more, make them earn more, you'll be addressing immediately topics like nutrition, topics like health, because they would be having many ways of feeding themselves and protecting themselves, etc. So just an idea, smallholder farmers, they talk about up to 10 hectares of land. For the European standards, 10 hectares it's existing, so in Portugal we have smallholder farmers. But mainly they will be in Asia, will be in Africa, and in Central America. And these are also, by the way, the countries where the increase of population is going to come from. So Africa is going to double population. Asia is not increasing that much anymore, luckily, but still increasing. So, one additional information which is quite impressive to me is that you see here in blue and green how the yields, in this case corn as an example, have been growing along the years since 1960, and how they have been growing in Europe and the US. They have also been growing everywhere, but you see that this gap is increasing. It is increasing, and if you see like to some average, you basically come to the conclusion that smallholder farmers of agriculture in low to middle income countries, they will be producing half of the average of the world. So the gap is huge. It's not because soils are bad, on the contrary. It's not because the technology is not available. It's available, but it's reaching them and making it work there where the farmers are, that it's really difficult. So one thing that helps is chemical engineering, just by the simple ways that you need to think about processes, you need to think about systems. As I used to do when I was studying chemical engineering here, think about the process, about things that come in, things that come out. And if you do this to farmers, it helps on the logic to find solutions. And that's what I did. So I tried to listen to them, try to understand their issues. I was with farmers in many countries and understanding what they need. So they need a lot. Right? And again, think about this global chart where our products, our vision, and what they need. And in this case, if you're thinking about the company buyer with seeds, crop protection, information and training, we do a lot, but it's just a part of what farmers need. So farmers need a lot more than that. From water, from labor is actually huge. Some nutrition, equipment, etc., etc. And with that, they produce crop quality that they can sell, right? If we think about the environment, waste and emissions, I've already mentioned today, it's possible to recover and even to capture carbon. So there are ways of thinking about agriculture, and this, by the way, the commitment that Bayern and now basically aside committed this year for regenerative agriculture. It's not only to produce more with less, it's to regenerate the soil, which is really key to increase, to allow sustainable agriculture in the future. Now, all this is very nice, but one thing is missing here, which is the money. The money goes out, right? And so, if you cannot address this issue, you can produce great, fine, and then it's typically what I did in the past. Every company did in the past. You sell your products, tell them this is really good, this is really good, we will control our diseases, you have season. But in this case, small farmers, you cannot do that, because farmers do not understand technology, do not know how to use it, do not know how to sell it, or will just sell to the first guy with the truck that comes and gives something for the potatoes or for the tomatoes. And remember, tomatoes are quite fragile, and if they are not sold the moment they are harvested, or the next day, basically the value will go down, and they will eventually not sell. So you need to find, you need to increase your reference system to include this operation here, which force you to think completely in a way that you need to include all the players to make this happen. If you don't want the markets, it's the only way you can make it happen, because simply farmers will not by themselves be able to do it. But it's as simple as this. So that's what we did. We have created an alliance called Better Life Farming, and we have created this ecosystem locally. So we have empowered, we have motivated people, which we call these agri-entrepreneurs, to own a little kiosk, which they can, so it's their investment, and they can serve up to 5 villages. So we talk about 500 farmers in the vicinity that will come to the shop. There is a little model farm where we demonstrate how things work, and we put them in contact with the partners, and with that they can get access to the products, they can see how they work, they can get credit, they can bring the production at the end of the season and sell it. Right? So we can close the cycle, address the issues by having these local solutions. In the digital world, they are still necessary, because we can have, when I started this 7 years ago, we did a research and there were something like 700 apps in agriculture, beautifully, like wow. They are not very helpful for farmers if they cannot put their tomatoes into the smartphone, right? So there needs to be a physical contact. So this looks like this. So it's not a big deal. It's really little shops where people will come, that people will get little advice. They will see some training of the entrepreneurs, some sessions with our partners. We also do trainings on how to use chemicals in the right way, so the stewardship is really important. And today this program is reaching already about 1 billion farmers. We have almost 3,000 Better Life farming centers in these countries, mainly Asia. So we started last year in Mexico and Honduras on 50 here. We have just launched in Tanzania. Next month will be Ivory Coast. But we are really doing a big effort to try to bring women as the owners of the center, because women are a hidden treasure in low-to-middle-income countries. They are not taken into account typically because they are not part of the circle of men, but they are the ones who go on the field, they are the ones who know these products, and if we are able to reach them, we will open a new market opportunity, and we will be much more efficient developing rural areas. And to do that, you need to have women, because you will not have women go to a shop with a full of men, but you have a lot of women go to a shop run by a woman. And that's what I'm trying to do. But it's very difficult. You need to convince the husbands, let your wife run the shop. Even if it's at the end of your money, whatever, please let her be the front face. So we have been very successful with this one. We had awards in Indonesia, in Bangladesh, so this country we are now there, and we have just been shortlisted this week, just did this time yesterday, for the World Sustainability Awards in October, so also famous, that's if something comes out. But the most important thing was a study that also came out last week. We paid 60 decibels, who is a company expert in this kind of research on the field, interviewing farmers, and they have confirmed that this program is increasing production to almost 50% of the farmers doing the program. They have said that they perceive an improvement of their lives. They have less stress, actually, they have less stress, they have increased income, and that's really important. Better way of farming, and they found it very useful. So this is really brand new information that we just published in the press release last week, and really confirming what I have seen with my own eyes. So in 2016, that was one of the first farmers that wanted to run the program. So he, Papu Singh, opened the first better farming center in the world. And I visited him last year, and we took a picture of the house he used to have, where he invited me to drink the tea. His wife brought the tea and he had to go, so we stayed and drink the tea. And now we opened a better farming center, and this is not science fiction, this is just what reality is. This is his new house. So in just 7 years, he was able to, that the shop is there, so he built the shop, so the single thing there was just a shop. Then after the money, I went inside. It doesn't look like a West civilization house. It's a poor infrastructure, but still you can see the changing life that you have in this zone. And this is only possible if you really fall in love for your cousin and fall in love for saving.
So I guess it's up to me to make the examination now. The industry is winning, right? 1-0, so let's see how it goes. I will, you have showed brilliantly how it is like to work in industry and to work in academy, and the two faces of the same coin, which is the work of a chemist or a chemical engineering, either in industry or in academy. And what I would like to know, and starting from the beginning and starting by an easy question, how was it that you ended up in the academy in the first place, Nuno, or in the industry for you, Lino? In particular, I would like to know, did you have a well-defined career development plan with well-established professional development goals, and did you know what skills you needed extra after the graduation or the PhD that would further your career, or was it really you were open to opportunities that life threw at you? How was it for you? Is it important to have a career development plan at all?
So in my case, I am someone who likes to plan. My wife usually attacks me because of that. She says I plan too much. I like to plan. I was always open to opportunities, but to be honest, since I am, 6 or 7 years old, I knew I wanted to teach. So it would be something, but I would become a teacher of something. So if you ask my parents, at some age I wanted to be teacher of English, then I wanted to teach mathematics, then I wanted to teach gymnastics, then I wanted to teach piano, then I wanted to be a driving instructor because I loved the process of taking the driver's license. And then eventually I came to university, I studied chemistry, and I understood I would really like to do what these people do, which is to be here and teach other students. And then later you understand, it's not just the desire to be a teacher, you need to do something with research, because research is what will take you to an academic position. And then it was clear for me what the plan was, the PhD, the postdoc, some sort of start of an academic career. How it then actually turned out is a lot more by chance and by taking opportunities. There was an opportunity to go to industry. So as I had received the offer to become an independent academic in 2008, I was at Stanford. I had the offer, I was negotiating the contract with the Max Planck Institute, and I got a contact from a competitor of Bayer Crop Science who told me, we heard about you. I didn't know that companies do this. We heard about you and we would like to hire you. Come and visit our site. And I told them very openly, but I want to do an academic career. They said, just come to visit our site. I told them that you are wasting your money. And they said, just come to visit our site. So I went, I visited their site, I met with people who actually seemed way smarter than some professors that I know that work in this, because it really changed my perspective, right? You typically think I want to do academia because in industry it's only people that are not interested in science, that do boring things. No, these were very motivated people, super smart, discussing like the orbital alignment in an SN2 reaction, but it was really about because, and I thought that this was not really what they were interested in, right? So they just made some boring heterocycles and that was it. And at the end of the day, they told me, if you want, the job is yours. And I really thought, if I ever wanted not to do academia, I would go here. But I really have prepared everything until now to do that job. So I said, and then they started saying, but it's a money question, we can offer you more. I said, please. And they said, we know you like to play the piano, so we can offer you a grand piano Bösendorfer together with as a starting package. And I said, please stop it. I really want to do my academic career regardless of salary. What I want to do is this. And so you could say there was a little bit of a planning from the moment I understood that research was necessary to become a teacher.
And what about extra skills that you had to
I very quickly
learn?
Realized that nothing of what you do during your undergrad, grad studies, postdoc is going to be useful to be a successful academic. And I think we all know this, right?
What?
You spend years learning how to best do chemical reactions. You spend years knowing how to interpret an NMR spectrum like that, how to clean your product, how to do the best column chromatography, how to design your research project, and you realize that that is completely irrelevant to whether you'll be successful or not in academia. What you need to be successful in academia is people management.
Yeah.
People. If it was, it's like Mourinho says, if it was just giving the tactic, we would all be Champions League winners. If it was just drawing the reactions on the paper, we would all publish in Science and Nature every day. It's because the people that have to do it require our guidance, they require to be inspired, they need you to manage them, they come to your office and they cry, they come to your office, they are happy, they don't want to work because they have a party to, I mean, you know it better than me.
Yeah.
The people management and how you actually control the ecosystem and the mood of people and the team spirit, that is really the decisive aspect. And then there's a lot of other things like writing grant proposals, right? I did not become a very good PhD student because I know how to write grant proposals. And yet it's decisive for getting the funding. Writing papers, actually convincing your colleagues, knowing how to network, which is something I think is becoming more and more important. Nowadays, I think you can be the best scientist in the world, but if you're not able to interact with people, to gain some friends and some allies, you will not really fulfill your full potential. There's a lot of people that are not necessarily the best scientists, but they know how to present themselves, they know how to network, they create a gang, and they become more successful sometimes than others that when you speak to them one-on-one, you understand, wow, this person is brilliant. But then you see them in a conference and you understand, yeah, this person cannot really convey the message, they cannot inspire, they cannot convince a community. And so there's a lot of things which, again, would not have made you more successful in your PhD or your postdoc, but which become decisive for an academic career.
What advice would you give to our young researchers and students to prepare that
So
side?
Go to research groups where you will have a chance to experience those things, right? This is what we do in our group. I ask students to write the first draft and the second draft of papers. I ask students who I see are interested, who I would like to write a research proposal about this and this topic, do you want to help me? And then they participate in writing the schemes or writing part of the things or searching the literature. Go to research groups where you can have supervision experience, if you want to do an academic career, right? In my group, we have undergraduate students coming every month. I delegate all the supervision on students. And then I charge them at the end and say, what did your student accomplish? How did you manage him or her? Which kind of project accompaniment did you do? Why did the project succeed or not succeed? So to create a little bit of personal responsibility. So go to research groups where you have an opportunity to get some of these glimpses of what your future career might be like, because A, it allows you to understand, do I really want to do this? One of my best collaborators is a senior scientist that did a PhD with me, went abroad for the postdoc and came back as a senior scientist. And I find him brilliant, probably the best scientist that was in my lab ever. And I thought he wanted to do his own academic career. And he told me, no, while I was in the group, I understood that all these writing proposals and being in charge of making ideas and being in charge of writing papers and coordinating all these people is far too much for what I want. I'd rather be in your group, assist you in doing whatever you need somebody to help you with, but not have all the responsibility. And I think it's very nice because it kind of allowed him to avoid what otherwise would for sure be his next step, right? He will come back from the postdoc, start their career, and probably become very unhappy or miserable because he understands, oh my God, I don't like any of the things I have to do.
So how was it for you?
Well, I start with the end, saying how similar it is in industry regarding leadership. So successful leaders are the ones who are able to communicate, the ones who are able to motivate teams, the ones who are able to delegate. So I'm not saying I'm one of those, but what I do in my team is telling them that they should not need me, that they should be able to run their projects, and they are all senior leaders, so they should be able to know how to manage, how to lead, and that's what I do. I let them lead and let them develop that. And also the stakeholder engagement piece that we were talking about is also very important. You cannot expect to be invited to a board meeting, present your stuff, and getting a standing ovation. Nobody has the time to understand what you are presenting, and they will not understand what you are presenting if they are not briefed. So you need to circulate, you need to engage them beforehand, and when you present, it's just a confirmation. Everybody knows it's going to be there. So all this backstage work is very tedious, it's time consuming, but without that, you will not be able to get funding or succeed in your work. Now getting back to what happened to me, actually in high school, I could not decide if I would go to an artistic career or to a scientific career, to a very late stage. I loved journalism, I loved writing, I loved painting, arts, everything. But I just thought very egoistically that if I would go to an artistic career, I would depend completely on people, if they like what I do or not, to be successful. I could not just be good. What does it mean being good as being an artist? I was not sure. I'm not sure today either. So I think I did the right thing. So that was an egoistic decision, and then I wanted just to come to this school because it was famous at that time. I think today I wanted to go technical. Then I wanted to become a scientist. So hard doing a PhD, and I luckily also had the chance to do a PhD here. But then during my PhD, I started to develop the interest for industry because I wanted to get impact on people. And not that you cannot get impact by doing research in academia. So, and you learn today by Nuno that is very good, well possible. And the more you interact with externals and provoke and ask questions, the more you get new information and more impact. But somehow I wanted to get more immediate impact, which we had some also during the PhD. We had some collaboration with the chemicals, so there was some smell of impact already back then. And then I presented my PhD work in a scientific conference, and by chance Bayer was there, and by chance Isabel was there, and by chance Eduardo Felipe was there, and this guy from Bayer could ask Isabel and Eduardo, who is this guy? And probably we were nice to me, so I don't know. But there was, I was invited for an interview, and that happened. So that's basically how it happened. Now, in terms of skills, what you learn and how you use it, I could not agree more with Nuno. Actually, you really need what you need in terms of a scientific book, but the skills you develop by thinking by yourself, by really finding solutions, by asking the scientific community when you are in the PhD process. This is really, really valuable. Yeah. And I think that really trains people in industry to go and look for solutions. They will not just wait for answers from the boss. They will not just sit and wait, okay, give me my next task. A leader, if you want to be successful in industry, you need to define your own tasks.
Yeah, that was my next question, was that you both have a PhD and you are working in academy and industry. How useful was it for you in industry to have the PhD? I mean, did it in any way, do you think it leveraged the young researchers or graduates to take a more transformative approach into things, into solutions for today's emergent society problems, or does it help or not? Or it's just 4 years?
I just started with
for Nuno, I think it's just obvious, right?
No, but I'm going to as well. I think really the PhD is that toolbox that you gain that you do not have when you do the graduation. You just have the master. Because you need to find solutions for problems that nobody had before. You really need to go for it. You are on your own. You need to define your way. That piece of training is really essential, according to me. And the other piece is having a PhD in Portugal. At that time, I really don't know how it is today, it was not valued by industry.
Yeah.
I remember I was contacting industry, and basically I was told, you are just an engineer, you wasted time doing the PhD. And that was so hard, right? And so I was also gaining motivation to go to a place, and actually Germany recognizes in the chemical industry a lot the PhD, so you immediately go to a leadership position
different level
with your PhD, the lowest of them, but you are there. And with the graduation, you don't go there. So that's a recognition that was nice to have, right? The motivation was there to learn and to bring this to.
And from the academic point of view, I totally agree with everything that Lino said. I think it's what I notice, and the beauty of supervising PhD students, now supervise, I don't know, 20 or something, is that you see a person arrive and you see an entirely different person 4 years later. And this is really true, right? You see almost a child arrive, and then you see a scientist ready to go to the world. And I think what happens in this period is a mental adjustment, the ability to actually overcome challenges, right? There is no PhD student in our group and in any group that is not faced with something that at some point might appear insoluble and not really doable. And then the ability to bang your head against the wall again and again and eventually find the solution to it, I think is beautiful. Plus, what I find in people before and after the PhD that really shocks me is how much more structured they are as human beings, right? And this you notice.
Afterwards.
You go to this cafe and you sit down with someone who finished their graduation. You go to the cafe and sit down with the same person after the PhD. You speak to a different person because the brain acquired a different structure, because the way of talking, the way of thinking acquired a different structure. I think this is ultimately the most valuable. Then whether you were able to do 3 columns in parallel or set up a reaction in 10 minutes, it's great because it allowed you to be more productive and to do the things that you have to do, but it's just a means to an end.
So career development plan, it's good, but you still have to be open to opportunities. PhD, definitely, it's very good. And the challenge, the great challenge you faced is communication. That's what I got from both of you right now.
And human interaction.
Yeah, human interaction in general. Right. So yeah, so there are many aspects in which you face similar challenges, even though we tend to think that the work of a chemist in the industry and in the academy, they are very different. And you just talked about that. I mean, Nuno, you told us that you can just wake up one day and decide to study, something out of the blue, make some blue sky research. But I wonder, and Nuno and Lino, I know that you have responsibilities towards fulfilling the company's business goals, and so usually your work is more structured. You have specialized departments with the inputs and outputs and so on. There's some workflow that you have to respect. But I wonder is it really like that? Because Nuno, you know that to make research we need funding, right? So. We are not so free, right? And basically, other than having your secure career in academy, which is pretty much secure, you are basically on your own, right? You have to get your own funding, equip your labs, maintain your equipment.
This is the part where I say something that my colleagues in Portugal find outrageous, but it's the truth. There is an academic system, which is called the Germanic academic system, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, where as a professor, you have a certain budget for mostly personnel, which is there for the rest of your career until you retire. And it is there precisely so that you can really explore these outrageous, ridiculous ideas without first having to convince someone that they are valuable. We can debate for a long time what that really leads to, because you would think, okay, then the people in these countries are permanently dreaming of ideal reactions, and actually they are not. and that's because of human nature. It's not because you give someone the security of being able to be outrageous that they will become outrageous. Actually, they take that security and they do the safest, closest to home type of research. Not everyone, but most of the cases. And when I speak to colleagues in the UK, where every single PhD student you have to fight for, every single master position you have to fight for, they are always shocked to understand that, yeah, but their research is not necessarily much more daring and visionary than ours. So this exists, this allows you to actually do that. The business plans that Lino refers to, I think, are still there. Again, we are talking at a certain level with a certain aspiration and the levels of excellence. You always have the need for a business plan because ultimately you have to generate impact within your community. So you cannot just go and research something where you will not foreseeably have a research output that has an impact, right? I want to study something spectacular because I imagine that if it works in this way, I could publish a paper in Science. And that aspiration to get to that paper in Science is my business plan. I need to choose problems where I know the potential impact is like this. Of course, the risk that I won't get there is very high, but if it succeeds, I will get this. That is somehow my business plan. It's implicit. It becomes visible when I have to write a grant proposal because then I have to convince the reviewers of that proposal to fund it, to recommend funding and not to criticize it. But it's implicit. Even if I don't have to write the proposal, once I present this to people, nobody wants to go to a conference and present something and hear the colleagues say, you know, your research is super boring, or we don't really care. Or present something and there are no questions, then you know that nobody found it exciting, right? So we have business plans that we have to present and to generate. It's just that they are not financial in the same sense.
And for you, I mean, is it really that you don't have to worry about funding as long as you fulfill the business goals of the company, or do you also have to fight it with other departments and show that this is a good investment?
Of course, there's a lot of fight for funding everywhere, but at home, my wife is a scientist, so she's in academia in the University of Cologne, and she always gets crazy when I kind of let go a number of the projects I'm working with, because she fights for 10,000 euros, right? To change to take consumables. It's a completely different dimension. But the fight for funding is there, and I need to justify every year what were the results, and then ask for the same funding for next year. But one thing I wanted to comment, because sometimes I'm invited to be part of panels of funding scholar grants that link to industry somehow, very important. And I'm somehow disappointed sometimes with the level of lack of understanding how the market works, and the scientific content is beautiful, but then when the business case comes at the end, the assumptions are not clear. Right? So what are the assumptions that you need? Because every business case is bad, because it's talking about the future and nobody knows the future. But it's as good as the assumptions are. And if you are able to explain the assumptions, you are able to convince and to fight for your faith.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fighting anyway.
And commenting on the business plans for academia, so I was just 2 weeks ago in the ERC starting grant panel. So this is grants of 1.5 million, right? I'm talking about the next brilliant minds of our generation. It's very nice to see these young people, but it's also very shocking to see, because these are people with amazing pedigrees. They did the best PhDs in the best places, published 12 papers in the PhD, always first, also amazing. Went to do postdocs in amazing places, and then they are unable to structure a research idea from beginning to end. Where you can see, actually, this could have been very nice, but somehow this person never was trained. Some of them are also reluctant to advise. I know a few cases where you try to give advice and then actually you say, well, I know it better. But it's a little bit funny, because it's not because you did a great PhD and a great postdoc that you are necessarily going to be a very successful independent researcher. So my recommendation to the young generation will also be very open to criticism, and remember what I tell you, your best friend is the one that is most brutal but constructive in their criticism. To have a proposal that I wrote and give to Isabel, for Isabel to tell me, this is wonderful, Nuno, you're going to get the money, is not really what you need. You need someone that goes and says, you know, this is bullshit. And if I was a reviewer and I read this, I would immediately reject it. You need the people that actually, those are your best friends, because that's the only way to improve. It might feel very ego-shattering in the moment, but yeah, it's the only way to move. Find such friends.
Perhaps there are some questions from the audience now. I have quite a few here, but it was just a warm up. Yes.
Hello, my name is and I just finished my bachelor's in engineering here in technique. And my background is on the way is Lino Dias showed that the farmer he started 7 years ago with a small house and then went to a big house, so it's a more direct impact on the community. And this is my problem with academia because mostly I see someone discover that this compound that helps with cancer or something, and then okay, you publish, and now what? What we can do with this? Can we put this on the market? How? I really wanted to know your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. I guess I should start. So first of all, you saw a case of research that came from academia, which actually went to the market, right? This is a company that sells this compound and takes wastewater. But I would even argue that the real impact I have as an academic professor is not measured in the millions of euros of party funding that I acquired or in the impact factor of the papers I've published. It's the people. Because I train people. I educate people, I shape the scientists of tomorrow. And this is an impact that nobody can take. Right? I mean, I teach hundreds of students. I supervise those that want to do organic chemistry. I am the PhD mentor of those that do a PhD. I am the postdoc advisor of those who come for a postdoc. You saw the numbers of people who have in the group, right? Over the years, you probably, this is a real impact. Someone was telling me one time, all the research that we do and all the beautiful papers that we publish as an academic researcher, in 20 years, nobody will give a damn. It's like my predecessor in the University of Vienna, Johann Mulzer, was an amazing organic chemist. Amazing. I mean, the total synthesis that he published, some things are like, wow, you read those papers and like, he retired, I took his position. A few years later, he came around and I told my PhD students, that's Professor Mulzer. Who? Okay. In the same way as probably Tina Turner died a couple of weeks ago, and maybe not you, but people 5 years younger than you said, Tina, what? Impact is very relative, but the impact I have is on students, right? I still get emails from people that were my students 10 years ago. I mean, I'm starting to get old. People that were my students 10 years ago at University of Vienna, that write me an email saying that they are now in a new place and they are doing this and that. Usually they write because they would need a recommendation letter for applying for the next step, but also because they want to share how much they remember the classes back then and blah, blah, blah. So impact in academia is most visible on the people. It's the people that we inspire. Yeah. And I think this is amazing. I find this beautiful. My papers will be forgotten in less than 10 years, I think.
Well, in the case of industry, I tend to believe the same. Although we have the other element, which is the brand of the company, the brand of the product, which can and should get the value of what you do and kind of keep the value, as the example I gave for more than 50 years, or something like that. But even one day they will be gone. I tend to believe and agree with Nuno on that one, and building people, and that starts with the family, but building your children, educating them. I always like to teach as well, so I was very pleased to come here also to share. Because sharing is the best thing you can do with your knowledge. Even if you find a molecule, like for example, the molecule that you gave, that you find something that has an impact. From many of these products that are developed in industry, you may come to a molecule, goes through the first tests, wow, goes to biology tests, amazing. But then on the environmental tests, not so good, we don't do it. So scientists spent 10 years, great people, amazing scientists, they formed also other people, 10 years working on a molecule that will never go to market. So they will be frustrated, right? So it's not about at the end that with the market, but they will be happy because they see that the knowledge is there, the techniques have been acquired, a new microscope, a new robot, or whatever, and that's how you evolve with people with technology, building on that, and hoping that the next generation will make it better.
And it's always a very horizontal way of, you have to build the knowledge first in order to reach the impact. It's always like a pyramid that grows. So any more questions from the audience? What about there at home?
Can I make a question to Lino, and a little bit out of everything, but at the very beginning of your talk, you have products developed with R&D and products developed without R&D.
I was just comparing how you start to earn money much later if you have a company based on R&D products. Because if you just sell bottles, you don't need to develop them, you just sell them.
Exactly.
And then the moment you bring them to the market, you start earning them. Right? It's just comparing that if you have R&D in your company, you just earn money much later. And you need to have this capacity to invest so much time before you start earning money. That was the comparison.
But I think that we should see R&D in a very broader way, and I don't think that there is any product developed without R&D. I mean, even basic things of integrating the process and knowing how the customer is reacting and getting this data and in the development of the product, all of that is,
Agree, but I was just making the example, for example, if you now want to acquire a business where they sell paper or they sell share, whatever.
yes.
So the business is there, you don't need to create the product. It's more product creation versus selling something that exists.
I know, I am from a generation that I saw all R&Ds going down, yes, even in the UK and all around, yes. And we are paying very heavily for that, nowadays, because a lot of things that were started, developed 40 years ago, they are bringing some of these things now back without having any development in their R&D departments. Thank you.
But I find the question very interesting because it might be alluding to something that companies used to have, which was called central research, which was people that had a kind of an academic mission inside the company. So they were not told that they had to generate a business plan, but they kind of were involved in that environment. So of course they would only look at things that had some potential application, but they did it in a very academic way. They published sometimes amazing papers, right? And the companies, one by one, all sequentially closed their central research department because, of course, there was not an obvious revenue coming from that, since it was just a little bit blue skies. I don't think it was ever completely free. It was always like, because, of course, if you are every day interacting with people that are in a certain business, then the ideas that you will have will somehow be ideas that could potentially impact that. But still, it was done in a very free way. Many of those people were affiliated to universities, so.
Correct.
And somehow the closure
I started
at Central Research.
At Central Technique, which was the technical research, and I was just there for 2 years.
It closed?
It closed. No, not closed, but it was restructured. It had
Restructuring is a nice word for closing.
Way of saying it,
So the budget was reduced drastically. And actually, it was fun because it was also due to a problem that happened with Bayer at that time. So the trade stock of Bayer dropped dramatically in 2002 or 2003 actually, and suddenly the decision was let's stop this funding for central research. It was a very good thing that happened, and I saw that as my opportunity. And we were in a team meeting at the end of the year, and I was like saying, well, there was no project for all the PhDs in the group. Well, I want to move. So it was actually an opportunity. But
Yes.
You're right. Definitely.
You have to reopen.
Okay, so a provocative question, which is, how do you see our function as academic or industry with the rise of artificial intelligence? So, will it be on the room full of students in 10 years, or will be on a room with your business plan team working, or will be computers with avatars doing the meeting, the teaching?
The teaching.
Well, I see AI as a big opportunity for development of products, for R&D for sure. If I think about all the computation that is done today to predict the formulas that may potentially have effect on biology, etc., that I think that work will be accelerated really dramatically. But the people interaction will not be replaced, right? There will always be people beside them, I believe, because I cannot imagine that people will invest in companies run by machines at today's standards, right? I may change my opinion in 20 years, but today I don't see that will be happening. So I think people element will be there, but AI will definitely reduce the need of labor force in many industries that I use.
I mostly agree. I have to say, the more I interact with AI tools, which I think have an amazing potential, the more I challenge whether we should call it artificial intelligence. I'm going to be very honest, right? It's artificial statistics.
Sorry, I didn't hear what.
I don't see much of an intelligence there yet. Maybe it will get to a point where it will really appear, but I feel, I don't find it worthy of the name intelligence yet. It might get there. What I do think is that in terms of teaching, it will just challenge us to do what we do best, which is be human. And that is something that impacts the way you teach in ways that I think no computer can emulate. But I think all these tools, that people are always very scared because some new technology appears and we're all going to be replaced. There are jobs that are going to disappear, that's clear. But there are also jobs that were eliminated by the invention of cars, by the invention of the steam machine. I mean, jobs have been replaced and new jobs have been created all over through our history, and we didn't really all die because of that. AI, I see as an amazing tool, but it's like you have to guide it. I think AI is very limited unless there is a human intention and a human understanding of where it can be used. At least right now, I hardly see AI as able to replace you. I mean, some people sometimes write articles saying, do you really want to put ChatGPT in charge? I don't know if any of you have tried. Who has used ChatGPT this week from our students? Not so many. You should use it more often, so you realize what it does amazingly well and what it does terribly bad. Right? There are some things where you're like, oof, this is stupid. That's the point where I'm like, artificial what? There are other things where I'm like, yes, when I define the task very clearly and I know what I want to do with it, then it gives me an output that is super useful. So
for example, ChatGPT can write you a paper. It can, on any topic. But then the references that it's on the...
are completely made up.
They don't exist.
ChatGPT generates papers authored by Mathilde Marques, Nuno Maulide, published in JAX 2013, volume number, page number. And then you go and you search, that paper doesn't exist.
But it's still learning and evolving.
It's learning, maybe one time it will really create something.
So, but you don't think that we will go to in silico chemistry altogether? And
I remember hearing this as a PhD student when combinatorial chemistry. We don't, and a lot of companies said, why do we need chemists anymore? We have these machines that can just combine the Suzuki coupling. You can combine all the boronic acids with all the halides in the world and make millions and millions of products. One of them will be the drug, one of them will be the agrochemical. Let's fire all these chemists. And it didn't happen. Actually, I don't know of a single drug or a single marketed product that came from combinatorial chemistry. I'm not saying that this is going to be the same with AI. I'm just saying that we may be over-projecting a tool that is a tool.
Why do you think no single drug came from combinatorial?
Because I have the impression that specifically in the case of drug discovery, we think we know a lot. And I would argue every single drug, every single agrochemical that makes it to the market is the singularity that proves we don't know anything.
Yeah.
But just because we generated so much data, we kind of got lucky and we did something that kind of has the effect. Because we think that it's docking and that it has this interaction. Is like, I showed you this beautiful picture. I think we don't know a lot of what really is going on. And then when we try to automatize it completely, we just fall flat.
But that's the whole point about artificial intelligence. You also don't know exactly how it comes out, but from the
Something
inputs
comes
you
out.
generate the outputs, but you don't know exactly. So that's a lot of what we do nowadays also. Yeah, I think we should do it. Yeah.
Can I comment on something you said, Nuno? Okay, there's many studies that show that leadership, communication, and managing skills are the best predictors we have for the highest success. Okay, both in industry and in academia. But these studies are based on people which are already the highest achievers. Okay, so when you say that communication is more important than doing good things in a lab, I think it's a bit tricky because you need to excel in the lab, okay, to excel in the technical skills to achieve the point where communication, leadership, and managing will get you to the next level. So I think there's a
Let's agree to disagree, because I could cite you, and I will not do so, names of people who are extremely successful and with scientific competence that is like this. Because they are great at selling themselves, they are great at presenting themselves, they have a great network. When you talk science with those people and you squeeze the science, you're like, what? And these people get grants of millions of euros. And so I would like to believe that it's like that. I fear that the reality in the world
so you have the
is
outliers.
a little bit, yeah, maybe.
There's a question there.
Let me just put that in other words. That means that probably we are losing brilliant scientists in the middle of the process. Right?
That means we are not empowering them with the right tools. Because I think Professor Mathilde Marx once told me, so I studied here and I was, how do you say it? A little bit clumsy in the lab, right? I once was playing with extraction. Oh yes, Professor Mathilde Marx saw me crying when an ampoule full of diethyl ether exploded and all my fume wood and my lab coat was and she was kind enough to tell me, just go home, it's okay, the experiment is finished. And then at the point when I asked her, what should I do and what could be a good career opportunity, she said, the lab skills you can learn. This, it's either there or not. And I think the same thing applies a little bit to some of these leadership competencies. I think they can be learned. It's just that there are not many opportunities in your training to really learn them. I mean, how many soft skills, but I mean, I'm not talking about bullshit also. How many good soft skills training do we give our PhD students? It's mostly learning by doing and learning by observing. You know what I did during my PhD? The soft skills I learned in my PhD, I had a little notebook. I love my PhD advisor, rest in peace, Van Marco, he passed away 5 years ago, an amazing chemist. But I had a notebook where I wrote all the things that Van Marco did that I would never do as a good leader. Because I saw directly in my colleagues the impact it had, right? And I can read things like, I shall never talk about a team member in the absence of that team. I shall never give negative feedback in front of the entire group. Right? But these seem to be obvious things. Clearly, Istvan Marko had never realized them. So that was my soft skills training. But if you don't have a possibility to learn those things, then you see your boss doing that, you assume that's the way to go, and then you just replicate it in your own group. And a lot of things are passed from generation to generation of group leaders. A lot of, in my opinion, bad habits, not because people are evil, but because people saw it like that, they experienced it like that, but this person is super successful, right? You go to the lab of the guy that won the Nobel Prize for organocatalysis. He did things that I found appalling with his group members, right? But these group members say, this guy won a Nobel Prize. He clearly was successful. Let's do what he did. Let's slave people and let's people. Yeah. And this is how bad things get turned. And actually, you understand very quickly, the Germans, I get the feeling the Germans have this feeling, and they probably pervasive in the whole German society, that if someone is doing something amazing, the last thing you do is tell them that what they are doing is amazing. Right? We in Portugal are a lot more open with positive feedback. In the Germanic world, it's like, don't tell him because he will get lazy. And I think nobody ever told those people that actually the most powerful tool I have as a group leader is one-on-one calling someone and saying, you know, I find what you are doing brilliant. That person goes away. I could have given him a $1,000 bonus. He would not be as beaming and motivated as he is when I say that. And if I say that in front of the whole group, then it's even more, because it's emulating. Then everybody else is like, oh, I also want to hear this. So there are things which I think we could teach. I probably was fortunate enough to have examples so bad that I could learn from them. But I think we missed, I don't know if you had any sort of, I went to leadership management of the Max Planck Society, leadership management courses. Some of these things were a little bit touched upon, but I feel like, yeah, not at all in a way that would really have allowed someone who is not so talented in leadership to become a good leader.
Well, one of the big problems from industry, especially big companies, is that you hire people from the best universities because you have the resources, you can scout, like as you mentioned, you can go there, but then you put them under huge hierarchical structures and they are invisible, right? And so if you do not have the right leaders to guide them, to train them to present, to communicate, to engage with others, they'll be frustrated and you will lose talent. So coming to a point of losing talent, you can also lose talent in industry by not getting people appreciation for what they do, not getting people visible to what they are doing, and not connecting them and teaching them how to promote their work. That's a clear need to do as a leader. Coming to the topic of how it is in Germany, appreciation is there. And I think the German society also developed a lot in the 22 years I've been observing it closely. But I think a typical situation would be not doing the wrong things is okay. So it's like avoiding mistakes is really a must-have in German or Germanic societies, and then doing the good things by demonstrating they are better than others. And I think it's a society much more perfectionist than Portuguese one to compare it. But what I loved about being a Portuguese in Germany was really bringing these spices of improvisation, of creativity.
Because they are rigid.
Probably Isabel heard a lot of complaints about that with my first boss, but that's the way things move, and it's also the mixture and diversity that makes again a lot of ideas coming and innovation coming up.
And commenting on that, I'm sorry because I think this topic is fascinating. Whenever I go to visit the university and I'm invited by a colleague and the colleague says, you meet my student, I always tell that colleague, set up a meeting with your worst students. Because I think the quality of a research group and the quality of the training of that research group is measured not by its top achievers, but by the people that are not as accomplished. To be honest, anybody can take a very talented student and make an overachiever out of that person. It's actually not even difficult, because that person is so self-motivated that they will do whatever they can in any research group. It's those people that need a little bit more support, that need a little bit more guidance, that are not so confident in their own abilities, that are probably not as good in shining and showing to everyone how great they are and presenting very nicely. Those are the ones, and if I want to understand, because of course I have to send my PhD students to postdocs elsewhere, and I want to send them to good places. If I want to understand, is this a lab where I want to send my PhD students, I ask my colleague, please set up a meeting with the ones you don't think are doing so great. Because then I see if these people are also able to present, to discuss, to debate, if they have the right structure in their mind, then I know that this group is a group that really tries to train everyone. If they just put in front of me the guys that published the 34th paper in JAX and Angewandte, like, yeah, that person probably would have been great anyway. So...
I think it's more related to what you're talking about. And some minutes ago, you started saying that what you learned as a graduate, a PhD, was not so important and you started learning after that. What I would like to hear about is I think that what you're talking here right now and the way to learn to be humble, the way to accept criticism, the way that you are taught on those subjects, not on chemistry, organic chemistry, thermodynamics, or whatever. What you are taught here on your mind should start in the university. Should and could. I don't think it is. What's your opinion?
I'm not sure we know how to, right? I mean, we have such a pressure as educators in university to teach the facts, right? To convey how to do these reactions, how to draw this mechanism, that, I mean, should even start in school before university, right?
Sure.
The way you deal with criticism is more, I think it's even more of a character, right? Are you the kind of person that is very comfortable with knowledge, or which is rather comfortable with criticism? Are you the kind of person that likes to exit their comfort zone? That likes to go outside of their comfort zone, right? We cannot necessarily expect that everybody has the same profile, the same skills, but how can we teach our undergraduate students, at least at university, to really want to go outside of what is easy and what is comfortable and what is nice?
I would not, that was not what I was talking about. I was talking about the way you face your life while you're a student in university. And I'm absolutely, I absolutely agree when you said that then you have to start in high school. Of course. And you have to start at home. Of course. That's part of life. But I don't think, okay, if you think about academia, starting where you are now, okay. Now I'm absolutely sure, I agree with you. I'm thinking about academia before
You get through.
okay? Or when you're just a teacher in the university and you never get that taught. Don't you have a role in that, in building that, building and molding that character that then afterwards will be able to join a group and be able to face those difficulties and knowing that it's not the best, and knowing to accept a criticism. Okay, you've done well, but you could have done best, whatever. And I think that if you, of course, you have the pressure to teach subjects, but the human being is much more than that.
Yeah.
And so if you don't try to I mean, that's my opinion. I want to hear yours. Should a teacher in the university try to overcome a little bit more than just teaching
Technical,
subjects?
yeah.
Okay?
Yes,
Like
absolutely
respect.
yes. Absolutely yes.
Like we are not the same. We are not equal. We don't have to be equal.
Exactly.
It's good to be different, but you have to have patterns. You have to have no, I'm forgetting the English word. Baliza.
Goalposts.
Limits, I would say.
Or do you think this is an old-fashioned way of thinking?
No. I totally agree. I think it's easier in the context of the research group because there you really interact with the people. In the context of the classroom, to be honest, I find it very challenging because there's a lot of students. There's one of you. There's a lot of stuff going on. How much of a relationship can you forge with each student as a teacher to allow them to?
But you can give them an example. And that starts with that, in my opinion.
True, there may be
cannot
things.
engage with everyone.
Yeah, there may be things which are even involuntary, right? If you, as a professor, are teaching an auditorium of 200 students, and someone asks a question for which you don't know the answer, and you bullshit them, you are transmitting an implicit message.
It's okay.
And it's true that one of the things I do, and I think we can do as teachers, is to say, you know what, I don't know. I think I know where to find, and I will search and tell you later. And that, I think, transmits a certain, so you can indeed lead by example. It's not so easy for you to really get, because there might be people who listen to this, see this, and just like.
Of course, but I think that the road starts well before.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that at least you got a very good startup here at Technical, because you are both very successful chemists in chemical engineering. But I'm wondering that you're both working abroad. And do we have to send our students abroad to reach that level of success? Or do you think that nowadays we have some path like that also here in Portugal? I mean, you are looking from outside. Can you, what is your view?
Honestly, changing, honestly evolving. You start to see also companies that start to hire also highly qualified people. I know that because I also got invitations for companies here that start paying well and start looking for high skills, so that we do this way. But I would not say it's over. It's evolving. Also, universities, you start to see also a lot of groups which are quite known outside. A lot of communication that come from Portugal. A lot of projects also at the European level, including Portuguese scientists. So I think it is totally evolving there. Let me just, before Nuno talks, I wanted just to comment on that topic of the skills. Really to say, if you look hard facts, I think a graduation into a master would be basically two things, really good ones. One is the capacity to solve problems, capacity to solve problems, and to learn by oneself to solve problems. And the other one is to present the solution. And I think Technical was amazing on my dissertation on solving problems. I think you find here ways, you are not given solutions, you are given questions in the normal classes, and you are forced to find solutions. I think on the presentation part could have been better. I think maybe there students could be forced or motivated to present more than what they do. That's one thing. Then you develop skills on the PhD that we talked about this already today on this toolbox. But then when you are in companies or maybe academia later on, one thing I would advise everybody to do is to check their own strengths. So there are tools to do it. I can recommend one book called Strengths Finder from the Gallup Institute. Basically, you just answer questions, and this is statistically validated by the thousands of answers they have from leaders. And then you find what are your strengths. And there are no perfect set of strengths. All strengths can be combined in a nice way. But the moment you know them, it can completely drive your development in your career because you know where you're good and what you need to do. And if you, as a leader, know the strengths of your team, you know that you are missing some strengths, so the next team member, you are looking for that strength. And that is also a way to build teams and get diversity in teams. Sorry, I wanted to just go back to the question.
Yeah.
Coming to the question,
Perfect.
Portugal, on the good way.
Okay, what do you think, Nuno?
I actually wanted to pick up on what you just said, because this idea that everybody has to develop in the same way is actually very fallacious. We are tempted to adopt that, right? What I would like is to have every PhD student do more or less the same track, and actually I came to realize that the best thing I can do as a group leader is to help those PhD students understand what seem to be their strongest points, and eventually help them squeeze those strongest points the maximum to really become the best. And some of them become the classical synthetic chemists that can go to industry. Some of them become the classical synthetic chemists that go to academia. Others become people who specialize in artistic depictions of science and created companies that make cover pictures. Another one is actually engenhocas, that makes machines and is now going to open a company to make a device that does automatic titration using a camera that recognizes a color change, because there are ways to do this, and there are algorithms that they can, and they're all trained in my lab. So I think it's nice because I never pushed them to be the thing, which probably would have given me more papers and given me more, right? I try really hard to recognize you have something great, let's develop that. Because that can make you unique, and that is so much better than just trying to format you the way you are. I agree with Lino that Portugal is really evolving a lot. I think we left when we left because we had to, but I think things are
Different
changing
times.
a lot. We see it also in interactions we have with the research groups here. I don't think people have to leave. It really depends, I think, on the discipline. Some disciplines are stronger than others. Some types of research are stronger than others, but this is the case in every country. And yeah, and to be honest, Technico, what I love most about Technico is that I learned not much organic chemistry, right? I arrived at the master, and Mathilde recommended the place where I should go, and I was going to group meetings and going out of those group meetings thinking I should kill myself. Because here I had the impression I knew all the organic chemistry of the world, and then I got there and they were talking about things and I was like, what are you actually? But I realized that what I knew very well. What I knew was way broader than most people knew. So I was, for example, in the kitchen conversation where someone was drawing something and was talking about a project of István Marko of aggregating things in micelles and then doing the reaction, a photochemical reaction inside the micelle. And then there was some graph. And I remember standing up, and I think all my professors that taught physical chemistry would be very proud. I don't know who. Was it you, Benilde, or was it you? Martinho. I went on that board and I said, yes, this is the critical micellar concentration, and you can deduce it based on this equation. And they were all like, how do you know this? And I said, yeah, I studied at Technico. So what we knew very well, and we knew a lot. And so it's much easier, I understand now, to have I see a big problem in the UK, for example, where students choose what they want. If I had chosen what I wanted, I would never have had any physical chemistry, I'm sorry. And I would have had organic chemistry 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, until infinitum, right? And I see these students that do this in the UK studies, and then they are incomplete scientists. And I love the fact that we here had a very broad base, because on a solid, strong base, you can always build. When the base is not there.
And I think with this we wrap it up, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was great.
Yeah.
I thank you, Lino and Nuno, for being here with us. I thank you, Ermelinda, for bringing up all these nice
I have so many other.
Yes.
Stay here.
I think that we don't stay here because the chairs are just.
Yeah, too tight.
But this is also a specialty of Technico, that you never get comfortable.
That is good. That's
very good.
Okay, so let me thank you once again. Let's